Hello everybody, my name is Chamundeshwari. Hope all of you are having a good day. This is a supplementary explanatory video for the analysis done on the dataset Madrid real estate market. This dataset is provided in .csv format by CloudyML as a part of the placement test series to me, and we have a total of 4 problem statements that we will discuss about in this video and the logic that I have used to solve this particular problem statements regarding this dataset. But before that, let me give you a briefing about this dataset. This dataset has around 59 columns and around 22,000 rows. But out of all of those columns, we have nothing called as is duplicated column, nor do we have any columns pertaining to the date time value wherein you could find out the most recent of the listings. With that thing in the background, let's start with the problem 1, which is identify and remove duplicated listings in the dataset. How would you use Power Query to manage duplicates and keep only the most recent listings based on the ID and is duplicated column? Okay, let me take you to the Power Query editor of this particular dataset. The thing that I have used, first thing I've said that there's nothing called as is duplicated column, so you have to create it yourself. But before that, how did I find out the count of the thing is that I counted the ID columns and I found out the count of it, and make sure that you use advanced group by option in the transform tab of Power Query and use an all rows operations too, because if you don't do that, you would only get the ID and the number of the count column, which you don't need, which is not the only columns that you need, and you need other columns too. That's the reason why I made an operation of all rows too and get the other values. And then I have added a conditional column based on that, wherein if the count column is more than 1, if the count column has a value greater than 1, it means that the ID is duplicated, and it means that we have duplicate columns in this data set, duplicate values in this data set. So I put the output as true, and if the count is not greater than 1, it means that it's false. Based on that, I have added a new conditional column called is duplicated, and I have changed its type to boolean values too. And when you filter the data, you could see that we have some only false values, which means that we have no duplicate columns in this data set. But in the first question, we also have that we need to make sure that it's sorted by the most recent listings. But because we have nothing of date time values in this particular data set, I have no other option but to assume that the ID value with highest ID value represents the most recent listing. If not, if we had a date time value, we would have sorted it and then used the reordered and then found out the duplicate columns in that. But because the Power Query editor has an also certain set of operations, I would have used table.buffer function in the mcode formula bar of this mcode, and then using that, first I would have sorted the IDs based on the recent listings and then found out the duplicate values. That would have been the way to do that. But here we have no other option but to assume that the ID with the highest value is the most recent listing. And before going to question number 2, I have done other cleaning steps too, like they are null values in the house type ID too, but I have found out this thing, the in the title, the first word block before the first delimiter is always the house type. Like say if it is piso, it starts with piso, the house type ID1 is pesos. I found that out, and using that I have built a conditional column wherein I would impute the null values with the first text block that they belong to. Using that, I imputed the null values, and then I have found out that they are null values in the square meter built too. But I have know that we have columns like by price and the by price by area, and square meter built by price area is nothing but the by price by the square meter built. So based on this logic, they have imputed the values of imputed values into the null values of the square meter built using that formula logic. And then I have for the key columns, let me show to the key columns how I have done. Key columns like has pool, has garden, is new development. All those values containing the blank values or null values in high ratio, but because these are the features which are specifically required for an analysis, I have imputed the null values with false. And there are also null values with the number of floors and number of rooms and number of bathrooms. I have imputed those null values with that of value 1, which makes sense because you cannot have any type of house with 0 rows, 0 rooms and 0 bathrooms. That just wouldn't happen. And then lastly, see over here, they are orientations of north, west, south and east, but these things have a lot of null values. Even after introducing a conditional column, custom column into this, we still have a lot of null values. So I have no other option but to use this option as a regional option instead of the traditional regional option wherein you would use just the north, south, west and east parts as the region values. But in this I had to use the subtitle San Cristobal, Los Angeles, San Andreas, these values as the regional values, because there are a lot of null values in this orientation part. Okay, now let's go to question number 2, which is price analysis based on property features. Create a report that analyzes how different features such as having a pool, having a garden or a new development affect the average property price. Which feature correlates most strongly with the higher prices? Okay, firstly, the visualization of my choice in this case are these 3 visualizations deal with this. Let me show it to you clearly. In the measures tab, I found out the average property price by just using an average function. In the DAX function, average of buy price would give you the average property price. And then you could see that in case of has pool and has garden, if you have a garden or a pool, the value is more than when you don't have that. But in case of an average property price by new development, you could see that the value is more when it's not a new development and less when it is a new development. To be precise, when you have a pool, you have to make a premium of 52.51% over the average property price in general. And if you have a garden, you have to be ready to pay a premium of 192.98% over the average property price. While for its new development, you have a negative premium of minus 10.10%, which effectively means that if it is a new development, you would get it at a lesser price than the average property price of the entire data set. And correlation, I have done it particularly for that too. How did I do that? You don't have a direct correlation option in Power BI, and I have no other option but to make use of the DAX functions to find it out. First, using the calculate function, I found out the average price for the garden and also average price for buy price, and then I have divided the numerator and denominator, wherein the numerator contained the covariance of the garden feature and the buy price feature, and denominator contains the standard deviation of buy price feature and also garden feature. Dividing that, you would get the correlation coefficient. And another thing that is important is that we have has garden, has pool and is new development all in Boolean values. You cannot correlate with a Boolean value and a numerical value. So I have coerced these Boolean values into 1 or 2, that is binary type values, using a calculated column and found out the correlation between them. Among this, you could see clearly that the highest correlation is between the garden feature and property price. But that's not the only highest correlation with the property price in this data set, because we have other things that correlated more with the property price. That is, buy price has a positive correlation with number of bathrooms and number of rooms most than all other features in the data set. How did I find it out? I made use of Python scripting in this given case, and I have imported Seaborn, Matplotlib, and I have found out the correlation between the between other features of the data set too, not just by price and has exterior, has pool, but I have found out the correlation between has pool and is exterior to other data sets too using this, and I have plotted it into a heat map using the color map Bluepoo, and then I have shown this. And how do you do this Python scripting? You don't have this option directly. You have to go to the files options, into the global options, and then let me show it to you for a moment. Okay, look over here, options. Give me a moment, please. It's taking time. Yeah, you use R scripting and it has to detect the home directories, and then you could use within the visualization the R Python scripting. You select this and then you get the values. This thing over here. You just select the values that all kind of values that you need in this data for this particular visualization. In this particular visualization, I used by price, has central heating, has garden, has individual heating, has lift, has parking, has pool, is exterior, number of floors, number of bathrooms, rent price, and all other features. You could see that there is a negative correlation between the rent price and also buy price, the highest negative correlation, which means that if the rent price increase, the buy price decrease. That's what it means. Maybe because the person has a high opportunity cost in that cases. That wraps up question number 2. Let's go to question number 3. Market segmentation for investment opportunities. Segment the property market into categories based on house type ID. For each category, calculate the average square meter per price and identify the top 5 most lucrative investment opportunities based on the square meter built and the loan interest rate. First things first, we have no loan interest rate data in this particular data set, and I cannot arbitrarily take any kind of interest rate for this because the interest rate is very personal and it depends on the personal income, credit history, your employment history, and all of the things considered. You would get a particular loan interest rate, so I cannot take it arbitrarily and not dealt with loan interest rate. And I have found out the top 5 investment opportunities only based on the square meter built. Okay, let me take you to the segmentation part. Here, first thing I've done is found out the rank for at the overall level. How did I do that? I've made use of rankx function, and I have ranked the house type IDs based on the average square meter built in the descending order, and made sure that I used all selected option because I want the particular visualization to actually, what do we say that, to actually, give me a moment please, what's the right word, to actually respect the other filters in the data set. And then after doing that, I filtered out the finca type of house because the frequency of the count in the entire data set, which is just 2, which means literally non-existent actually. So I'm not dealing those type of houses for ranking, and using that you could see that the top 1 rank is Casa or Chalet. And then within that I found out within house type rank ID, the top 5 within each house type ID. How did I do that? I again made use of rankx, and making use of the calculate table, I have written a customized logic wherein you would deal with only a particular category at a time. This one, houses matter at house type ID, max of the house type ID. This thing would make sure that we are dealing with only one particular category at a time. Using that, I found out the top 5 categories within each category, top 5 IDs listings, property listings within each category. Let me show you, just show you at a glance. If I'm dealing with only duplex, see, these are the top 5s. If I'm dealing with only atticos, these are the top 5 within that category. That's what we have achieved through within house type rank. And then interactive dashboard creation. Design a comprehensive dashboard that includes filters for region, is exterior, has pool, and is new development. Incorporate visuals that dynamically adjust to show data such as average price, total listings, and average square meter price. Okay, let me take you to my dashboard. See, this is the entire dashboard wherein I have made use of the format options, see the format options, and set the canvas background and canvas settings in a way that I wanted, and design the entire look of the dashboard of how I want the dashboard to look. And then I've used cards to find out the average property price, total property listings, and the average price per square meter and average square meter built. And also I've wanted to find out the feature to overall listings count, wherein I have found out that 24% of the properties do have pool feature, and 7.16% has garden, and see only 6.76% of the things are developed. And then for the interactivity portion, I have added filters on house types, region, new development, has garden, has pool, and an exterior. And I also find out the premium you have to pay over the average property price if you have a certain features like say pool, garden, development, or exterior. We could have done it otherwise, but I have decided to only limit it to these 4 features. And then for the detail analysis, I made use of dashboards and navigation buttons to go into the further details. Like, look over here, you would get the number of listings in a region and also correlation between them. Like if you limit it to just Chamberi, this is the filter, you would get the correlation between the feature and the property price for that particular region. And then if you go further, you will find out the correlation matrix of different features with different features. And then this thing, you will find out the count of the house types, the frequency of the listings, and for which house type they belong to, and what is their average square meter price, and what's the average square meter built for that particular house types. That's the details that I have dealt with. Thank you. Thanks a lot for this opportunity.